Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy Kenny, and this is the Assassination of Gianni Versace, Season 2, Episode 9, and this is the finale, and the name of this episode is Alone. This was a very moving episode. It damn near made me, I damn near broke down at the end of this, because this episode was very heavy. So, let me begin. The episode begins January 15th, 1997. This is in Miami, Florida. This is the day that Gianni Versace is assassinated. We see Andrew before the killing. He walks right by police, and next thing you know, he just literally walks up to Versace while he's about to open the door to his home and shoots him in cold blood. And there you have the infamous scene with the blood on the steps, and we see that Andrew Cunanan finds this beach house where he breaks in. He pretty much makes himself at home. He pretty much turns on the TV, and they're pretty much talking about the murder of Gianni Versace. They're showing the blood on the steps. Something that I remember when that happened. In 97, I believe I was 14 or 15, I believe, at that time. And I remember seeing the blood on the steps and literally being stopped dead in my tracks, because just like the sheer shock that someone can just be killed in cold blood right in front of their house. And worse, it happened in a very, upper class neighborhood. So it definitely sent shockwaves. And then on top of it, because this was a celebrity, a world-renowned fashion designer. So he's watching the coverage on the news. He gets some champagne, he takes off the top, sits it down, and then all of a sudden they mention his name. And, next thing you know, we actually see that the champagne bottle pops open, and he gets shook. But he's actually enjoying the footage. He's liking the fact that they're talking about him. But then later on, he also realizes that, he starts to get like this sinking feeling, because he goes outside after watching the news coverage. He begins to realize that it's only a matter of time, so he's now thinking of like what's his next move is going to be. Around the same time in Tampa, Florida, Marilyn Miglin, the wife of Lee Miglin, Andrew Cunanan's third victim, she actually meets with an agent, and she literally just lets it be known that she's disgusted. Why haven't you called him? It's been 2 months, And then all of a sudden, now the murder of Versace, now you guys want to do your job, So she was she just didn't care for the police at all, And she's pretty much, and she also asked the question, how many more people are going to die? So pretty much she says that, well, he's still, in Miami. He's in Miami, but, for your own safety, since your husband was one of the victims, you should actually leave and, go back home. And she says, oh, no, I've never missed a show. I've never missed a broadcast, and I don't tend to do it now. And she was like, oh, you expect me to run and hide? That ain't happening. So even in this time, Marilyn is still being very strong, very determined, and we see that same quality in Donatella. That they're very strong during like a very grief-stricken, moment. And then we actually see that eventually, Marilyn Miglin, talks to the press because, of course, Lee was one of the victims. So then we also see that Andrew, is like literally, has like a disguise on. He has like this yellow yellow cap on with some shades, and we see that he walks and follows this woman, and then he ends up stealing a purse, and he's in the car. He pretty much found the car and started. His plan was to get out of Miami. And he's laughing at because they're talking all about the details of the case, and they're mentioning his name, and he's getting his life from it. But then he hits a roadblock, and he notices that they're questioning every single person that's going beyond this point. So he decides to do a U-turn and ends up talking to this elderly guy, who pretty much tells him that, they got police checkpoints throughout the city. And, they're looking for some guy named Andrew Cunanan. And he's like, so what's your name? And he says, my name is Kirk DeMars, the same name that he gave, that guy Ronnie, the druggie that he used to hang out with when he first got to Miami. So then we literally see that Andrew just goes bananas. He goes in front of this river. He goes in front of this body of water and starts screaming and throws the keys in the river because he realizes he's not going to be able to get out of Miami. So it's like slowly but surely we're seeing that confidence and that cockiness begin to diminish. So that was going on. Then we actually see that the police knock on Marianne's door, Andrew's mother. She's literally watching the news with a cover over her in the TV, and she's like, have you killed my son? And they pretty much bring her in, and she's looking at all of the pandemonium that is going on around her, cameras, the news, everything. Like, she's literally, like, in shock and pretty much taken aback by all the paranoia. And at the same time, Andrew is watching this on television, watching his own mother, and it's just sad because this is the second time that a man in her life has ripped the rug from under her. Because, we saw on the last episode how Modesto left him poor and destitute when he was embezzling money and decided to skip and move back to the Philippines and literally sold the house right from under them. And to the point where she had to go on food stamps and practically was on welfare. And, well, probably was on welfare. And then, now her son is now, a serial killer. So it's like 2 men in her life, a son that she loved and brought up has literally, turned for the worse. So it was just like, wow. Just like one generation and the second generation, both fell apart. Alright, there we go. So next, we actually see that the Miami police go to visit Ronnie. Now, y'all remember Ronnie? Ronnie was the guy with HIV who's also a drug addict who Andrew befriended when he first came to Miami. And pretty much the police was like, you lied to us. He actually stayed here with you and you guys were friends. And then, like, he was saying that, well, I didn't lie, and, he was here, but, we're not friends. And then when they get him into the interrogation, I had to side with Ronnie in this situation, because even though he's on drugs, and even though he's, HIV, and, looks like he's out of it, he was so right when he was talking to these police. And he was saying that, you mean to tell me that all of these murders happen right under your noses? The problem is, it really ain't Andrew's. The problem is that you guys didn't care. You didn't give a damn that these people he killed were, like, closeted, gay men, whatever. You guys didn't give a shit, but until he killed a celebrity, now you guys are ready to do something. And then he's like, and then, like, the guy's like, you think this is a joke? He's like, Like, yeah. And, well, not necessarily, but, you know, he's a joke to you. And if anything, he's just talking about how homophobia was so thick that it took him to kill Gianni Versace for them to finally act on taking him down. By this time, this man had killed 4 people. And pretty much, he told it real. He's like, first of all, you were disgusted with him before he did what he did. And that's pretty much your take on us as a society, that we're just supposed to shrivel up and die and be unseen. You know, and the thing about it, you think Andrew's hiding? He's not hiding. He wants to be seen. So I was like, that was a deep scene. And we see that Andrew goes into this boat, you know, and literally goes in there to try to find food. And we see that a lady comes in, you know, comes in the boat. He hides in this room. She goes in there because she hears a noise. She pushes on the door, and the door pushes back. So she hurries up and gets up out of there. And then once finally Andrew comes out of the boat, he sees that there are authorities in the area. So therefore, he pretty much, you know, gets out and goes back to the beach house, and he sees that his best friend Lizzie's on the news, and she's pretty much saying that, you know, Andrew's a good friend. He would never do anything like this. This is nothing like him, and I know he cares what others think of him, and I just ask that he come forward and that we can end this peacefully. So we already see right there, you know, you got people who had a different interpretation of who Andrew was. I mean, Lizzie only saw the good side of Andrew Cunanan. She didn't see this murderous, treacherous, lying, stunt queen ass bitch side that Andrew, you know, pretty much displayed throughout his life. And then we also see that Howard Madsen, who's the father of David Madsen, they're talking to him on the news, and he's watching it, and he pretty much, you know, says that, look, my son is innocent, you know, and, you know, he's talking about David Madsen and everything, and talking about the crime. He said, my son has not done anything wrong. He was not on some killing spree with Andrew. Andrew took him, probably against his will, or probably he was so afraid that he went along with everything Andrew said. And Andrew's mad because he's telling them the truth, so he starts turning off the TV. He turns off one TV. He hears it on the other TV because he had like 3 TVs in this beach house. He turns off one TV, then the TV in the kitchen, and then he still hears Howard Madsen talking. So it's like the chickens are coming home to roost. It's like now he's playing back everything he's done and realizes that, look, there is no way out of this shit. And you know, but then when he gets upstairs and that TV's on, he does see a moment where there's a picture of David Madsen, and he stops dead in his tracks because he really did, you know, love David. And then we see later on that the food is low. And he gets to a point where he gets so low that he starts to dig in the trash can for stuff to eat. And then he finds dog food. And literally starts to eat dog food. At first it was nasty, but then after a while, he got used to it. I mean, he literally got to the point where he hit rock bottom. There was no escape. There was no way out. And then he's watching TV, and so happens the person that he's watching on TV is Marilyn Miglin. She's doing this infomercial, and she talks about this magic perfume and what inspired her to create this perfume. She talks about when she was young, her father had died unexpectedly. The father was a breadwinner of the family. They lived, you know, pretty much somewhat of a decent life. But then after her father died, everything got turned upside down, and her mother had to work 2 or 3 jobs. And then, you know, even me being a young person, I had to get a job, you know. And, you know, she said her mother, like, over the years, like apologized to her because she missed out on some of her childhood because she had to work to support the family. But she said that, you know, me doing this perfume is like going back in time, you know, to really show that, you know, because, you know, and she also talked about how her father always said she was special, but yet, you know, was thrown into a situation where she didn't feel so special, but she never let go of that. She never let go of the fact that her dad said she was special, and she worked her way to where she is. And it's a funny thing that Andrew's watching this, because this is exactly the same type of principle that Gianni Versace did. He followed that same momentum. He worked hard to get to where he was. The same thing with Marilyn Miglin. The same thing with her husband Lee. These people actually worked hard for their success, and Andrew realizes hard work is the way to get to success, but now it's too late. Because you really saw that he was really focused on what she was talking about. So next we see that he ends up finding a payphone, and he calls his father, who's in, Milan, the Philippines, and he's crying to his father. He says that, no, we ain't doing that crying, men don't cry, and pretty much, he says that you have a lot of outstanding charges against you. And he's like, Dad, I don't know what to do. He says, I'm on my way. I'll be there in 24 hours. I'll be there to hug you and hold you in my arms. Wait for me. I'll be there soon. Don't worry. Pack your clothes, and we're going to be leaving. So we see that Andrew packs his clothes. He actually, leaves his passport, and he waits for his dad to show up. Let's just say Daddy showed up, but he didn't show up at the beach house. Daddy showed up on television, because let's just be real. We know the character of Modesto to be like a stunt master and an opportunist. And he literally pulled one out his ass, because we see that he pretty much all of a sudden hears the TV and hears his father's voice. Because he went outside looking for his dad, see if his dad was going to show up. Dad never showed up. But then he heard his dad's voice. His father's on television, and he's pretty much saying that, one, my son is not a homosexual. My son is innocent. He was the perfect boy, and, then he says that, I talked to him last night. You're never going to catch him because, and like the thing is, we talked last night, and what we discussed was movie rights for his life story. So the father's using his situation to make money off his ass, and then he's saying, I'm right now in negotiations with Hollywood for Milan. I really want his story to be told. I mean, just literally decided to exploit his son at that last moment. And it got to the point where Andrew got so damn angry, he took the gun and shot the damn TV out. So that shit was crazy. Like, the one time his father could have actually risked himself, because, his father has outstanding charges, but he was saying he was going to risk himself to go be there for his son. That ain't what he did. He pretty much took the situation and decided to turn a profit for himself. So Andrew finally gets the realization that he's alone. The one person that he thought he had, he realized he doesn't have anymore. So then we get a scene of July 22nd, 1997. It's the day of Versace's funeral. We have a scene with Antonio and Donatella, and she is still, in a way, blaming Antonio for this, in a way saying that, if you would have been there, he would still be here. If everyone had did their job, he would still be alive. And, Antonio breaks down and kind of tells her, like, look, I heard a shot. When he says, when I heard the shot, I knew something happened to him. And I knew it because my heart stopped. My heart, like, literally stopped dead in its tracks. But then he's saying that, we have each other, with the inheritance and everything. I'm gonna stay in Lake Como, and I'm gonna actually, that I know that's what he would have wanted me to do, so I'm gonna stay in the house in Lake Como and, get through this. Donatello lets him know, I don't know how to break this to you, but Gianni doesn't own any of the houses. So he's kind of like, excuse me? And she's like, yeah, he spent too much money. The houses, the will, everything is controlled by the board of Versace. So pretty much, the actual corporation controls the assets because, he had spent too much money, and literally they took control, they pretty much took control of his assets. But she tells him that, look, you can stay at Lake Como for the funeral, and you can, take some time to yourself. But then he was saying that, what about me? What's going to happen to me? After that, what happens? And she's like, look, today's the day we say goodbye. I was like, damn, Donatello, you cold as fuck, ain't you? And he just says that, and then, Antonio's like, look, you just can't throw me away like a piece of trash. I love him. He meant everything to me. And she's saying that, look, again, it's not in my hands. Everything is controlled by the board. But he's like, but you have say, though. And then she's like, I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry for all of us. So, completely just blew his ass off, and you just see that, Antonio is broken. It's like, that, because we saw in the first episode how happy he was when Gianni was on his way out, to run some errands before he got shot. And we saw how happy that man was, and we just literally saw how that happiness literally was just ripped away from him, and he's just like a former shell of himself. So the funeral is about to go on. In the meantime, Andrew is actually watching the funeral. He's eating dog food. He notices a cockroach, which he traps with a glass, and later on the cockroach dies. Pretty much we actually see the actual funeral footage, which I definitely remember. I definitely remember Elton John being so deeply grief-stricken because him and Gianni Versace were very close friends. And he was also being comforted by Princess Diana, who would die a month later on August 31st. So it's like she was there to comfort Elton John, and then a month later we were saying goodbye to Princess Diana. So close together. And, she was also friends with Gianni Versace. I mean, she was one of those people who helped put Versace on the map. One of those, figures who loved wearing his clothes. And then this scene, the funeral scene really disturbed me because, they mention Donatella, they mention their older brother Santo, and they don't even mention Antonio's. And Antonio's sitting right there with the family. It's like Antonio never existed. And then the thing that really pissed me off was that the priest went to console the family. He held his hands, and they kissed their hands because they're Catholic. He went to every single one of them, and he put his hands out. They kissed his hand, and then he put his hands out for Antonio. Antonio went to kiss his hand. He snatched his hand and walked away. I'm like, you evil son of a bitch! You are a person of the cloth. Regardless of your personal feelings, you do not have the right to condemn anybody because you're not God. Moving on, because that really pissed me off. That really made me hot. Because this is the man who just lost the love of his life. Whether the fact you actually agree with whether you agree with homosexuality or not, that's a non-important issue. That man was a part of his life for 15 years. How dare you disrespect him, in his time of grief? I'm serious. Somebody should have punched that priest in his face because that was just really, really nasty. And you want to call yourself God, but then you do evil in the sight of him? Get the fuck out of here. Next. Okay. So, therefore, we next see that, we even see that, they were even singing a hymn, in the service, and Andrew knew the hymn because, he went to a private school, which they were Catholic, so he knew the hymn and he was singing along. It's like Andrew is literally breaking down because everything is closing in and there's nowhere for him to run or hide. And then we later see that he ends up shaving his head. We see that the guy who owns the houseboat gets a call to go check that, to go check and see, because everybody, they're closing in, so they're reaching out to everyone in the area. They reached out to the guy who owns the houseboat. He goes in there with a gun. He sees that because he shot out the TV, he used a projector to watch the funeral, and we actually see Naomi Campbell in her infamous interview where she breaks down when she's talking about Versace, and the guy has a gun, and he's asking, is anybody in there? Then all of a sudden, Andrew shoots his gun. He literally hauls ass and gets up out of there, so now he knows that's where Andrew is. And then literally we see all the squad, they get their guns and everything together, and they're ready. We see that they end up having snipers, near the house. They literally have the whole house cornered, and we literally see that the father is literally watching this on television. We see that there was a moment where Andrew and his young version, kind of sit side by side, who he is, and then the little boy, who had all of these aspirations, all these dreams, and look where he is now. He's literally at the bottom, and it's a done deal. Next thing you know, they get the command to shut the power, so they shut down everything. They begin to shooting smoke bombs, and then they literally enter, and then we see that he's actually in his underwear, and he literally gets the gun, puts it in his mouth, and blows his brains out. And then they kind of go back to when when he actually did meet Gianni. It was after the opera or whatever. He starts talking about I have dreams of being special and all of that, and he asks him, can he be one of his can he actually be his assistant? And he told him, I don't need an assistant. But he's like, but I don't but he's like, what if this is meant to be? What if me and you are what is it he pretty much was like, okay, so how do you know that me and you are not meant to be, that this is destiny? And he pretty much said that, no, I wanted you to come here because I wanted to help inspire you in your dreams and your endeavors. But I'm good where I am. And then he tried to make a move, and he was like, I'm not here for that. I really do like you, and I really do see great things in you. But, I brought you here so you can get inspired to go out here and conquer, your own destiny. But then he's saying that, well, maybe can we do dinner or something sometime? And he's like, yeah. Maybe, another night, another city, we can make that happen. So we kind of see that rejection is what began to, that's what kind of lit the spark, is that he wanted to get into Johnny's life, but Johnny had that wall up and he wasn't going to let him in. So, and then we actually see that, finally they go in and they realize that Andrew's dead, and the police, the detective was like, he's just a boy. And he was very young, and literally just went down the wrong path. And if you've really been watching this season and you saw his upbringing and you saw the way he was and the way he portrayed himself, there's no surprise that things led the way they did. It was like he was just destined for something bad, because he had a lot of you know, bad morals that were taught to him by his father. And then we actually see that, you know, they finally go to Merlin Miglin, let him know that, that it's over. And she's like, did you catch him? And she's like, well, he killed himself. And she's like, well, good. I'm glad it's over. Completely blew off the damn police because, yeah, it took for Gianni Versace to get murdered for them to take down Andrew. When they didn't even take him down, Andrew took himself out. So then she goes into her dressing room, and the lady that she does the infomercial with came in to check on her, and she was saying that, I used to get a lot of fan mail, but then yet I've been getting a lot of letters, and most of them are about my husband, and I realized that how much of a good man Lee was. He helped a lot of people. Like, one guy said he helped pay his rent. One guy said he helped, pay for his hospital stay. One person said he bought groceries for them. Like, she really sees, and she says he never told me any of this. So she realizes how much of a good person Lee was, and sadly, a bad thing happened to a really good person. And she's like, and she says, I respond to every single one of them because he's alive in these letters, and I'm so proud of him. That damn near made me cry because it was like, wow, this was a good person, and just his interaction with Andrew Cunanan, he met his demise. So we see that Donatella and Santo have a moment where she was saying that Gianni actually called her the day of his murder. And she had a show in Rome, and he was always calling, being on top of her and shit. And she just didn't want to be bothered because she's like, I had everything. I knew what I was doing, but Gianni was still on me. So when I got out the call, I was just so pissed off that when he called back 30 minutes later, I ignored his call. And she breaks down. And she said that was I actually had an opportunity to speak to my brother, and I ignored his call, and she just fell apart. And then we see that Antonio, he actually attempts suicide by taking a handful of pills. The maid finds him, but, later on, they don't actually show us in the show, but what actually happens is that they did renegotiate, the deal. He did get some money from Gianni, and he was able to stay in one of Versace's houses, and he eventually ended up becoming a fashion designer. He was a designer himself because he used to design for Versace's parent company, but then he ended up developing his own fashion company in Italy, and that's where he resides to this day. And then we literally see that Donatella is looking at her brother's ashes, and we see that she looks up, and it's just so dark and eerie. But then we see the actual Versace seal, and we see Donatella's face in it. So it was like Gianni was letting her know, it's time for you to take over. You got to keep going. And we see that 20 so years later, Versace is still thriving. And then we also see the difference that, yes, Andrew Cunanan is known, but only known under Versace, and we see that here it is, Versace had this big funeral. We see that Andrew Cunanan was literally buried, but he's buried in the wall amongst all of these other bodies. So we literally see that, even in death, Andrew still gets no respect because he never earned it. So that's what I have, everybody. If I missed anything, put it down in the comments. I'd love to talk to you about it. But subscribe to my channel. Click that bell so you get notifications every time I drop a video. Also, follow me on all of my social platforms. I have them all listed in the description box. Also, like this video, comment on this video, and share this video. This was a great second season of American Crime Story, and we literally come to see that this case was far more crazy, or just as explosive as the O.J. Simpson case. And due to the fact that it involved, the gay community, it really didn't get the actual, focus that it deserved. But, I'm glad that Ryan Murphy actually did this, because you literally, because even though some of it is fiction and some of this was actually based on real events, you really can kind of get a picture of what led to certain actions, as to why Andrew Cunanan became a killer, and how just by just plain circumstances, Gianni Versace just got killed in broad daylight. So that's what I have, y'all. I really enjoyed this season. So with that being said, take care.